I said, I could deliver an oratory or a message or a sermon or whatever, and a week later, people could not remember 90% of it. But a movie that I had in theaters in 2022, they can probably remember every single scene from that movie because the visuals stick with us. There's something called the dual code theory of cognition, that we process images in one area of our brain, we process text in another area of our brain. But when you measure those together, put those together, and that's exactly what comics does. There's a lot more engagement, there's a lot more reading. Like, for example, you held up the America Part 1. We just get flooded from our customers, and this one teacher wrote us a week or two ago. She said, I ordered your America Part 1 or whatever it was. I was going to start using it in my classroom, but she said this kid came up and grabbed it, and he's just been devouring it. Well, kids can really remember and understand and really begin to see. Hey, I'm doing great. We're here in Florida, and it's like balmy, so I'm doing good.
Man, it's like 25 degrees here. It was like 12 this morning.
Whoa! Now, where are you out of?
Oklahoma.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a ton of things I want to talk to you about. We'll get to the comics and all that. I guess I want to start by saying you are lucky to be alive, man. You had some scares pretty early on in life.
I did.
So walk me back to when you were 4, right?
Yeah, I've had multiple near-death experiences. It really started when I was 4. Yeah, I had my father was a contractor. I was walking behind him. We were moving to a new city, and he didn't know I was behind him. And a projectile piece of metal came out of the mower, hit me in the stomach. Then I can remember laying on the seat of the car as he's driving me to the hospital, and blood coming out of my intestines, and obviously bad pain and everything. The challenge was when they got me to the hospital, they didn't have enough blood, so they put out a call to all of the prisoners at the local prison, and they brought all the prisoners in, and they began funneling blood into me. Couldn't get my temperature down, so they packed me in ice in a cow trough. So anyway, I went through that. Then I was 19. I got gangrene from that same thing. Almost had a very close experience when I was 19, and then I've had they found a couple of things that they just didn't know I had. I'm a runner, and the doctor did an EKG. He goes, "Man, why do you have a bad EKG? You're like in perfect shape." And they found out I had an artery routed the wrong way. And so, yeah, I've been through a few what I call torpedoes. And I told my wife, I said, "Listen, when I really do drop, that it's God's will, because He's kept me alive for all of these other episodes."
So with your faith journey as well, did that begin sort of in the same trajectory, or was it when you were 19 that?
Yeah, when I was 19, it really, I kind of, like a lot of people, I said, well, I'm just going to live my life and I'm just going to party, just have a good time. Maybe I'll think about God later on. But when I was 19, when I came out of the hospital, like right now I weigh like 215 pounds. When I got out of the hospital, I weighed 135 pounds. I looked like a POW. They had, what happened was they had gangrene. The doctor said, "We got to operate on you immediately. You have gangrene from this wound that happened earlier." So they did immediate surgery, but they kept having problems, and it didn't correct itself. And he, basically said, "If this doesn't do it, we're gonna have to give you a colostomy." And oh my goodness, I'm 19. But anyway, I had a Presbyterian pastor came and shared with me about faith in Christ, and it just really made total sense to me. And my whole idea that I'm just living for myself, I realized how stupid that was, and it began a process. Of course, it took me a while to get all the partying and everything out of me, but anyway, the Lord really began turning me at that point in 19, and then in my early 20s, I really made a full commitment to Him. And, it's been it's been a bucking bronco ride ever since then.
So the Presbyterian pastor visited you in the hospital, and what he said just kind of stuck with you?
Yeah, he just went through the basics of the gospel, the ABC, acknowledging that you're a sinner, which was not hard for me, believing, understanding that Christ died on the cross for my sin, and confessing Him and really turning my life over to Him. And he was a really kind, godly man. He was just a really good guy. And the thing was, I was at a very desperate point. I mean, 135 pounds. It was, they didn't know if I was going to live or I was going to die. The doctor came in and said, "Hey, I can try one more procedure. If this doesn't work, then, then we'll have to do this, colostomy deal." But anyway, when you come close to losing your life, and I've had head-on wrecks since then, I've had other things, I had melanoma, I mean, just had these different things. And what happened was it really helped me to really focus on eternity, to realize, yeah, this life, God gives us a great life here, but even the best life is very, very short. I've already lost several friends that have, stepped off into eternity. And I realized, the next life is really what I need to prepare for. And the focus of my life really needs to be on the preparation of the longer life. And it's just, I think that's one of the really healthy things about becoming a follower of Christ. It really refocuses you. And really, I think besides that, it actualizes all the gifts that are already in you that you don't even know that you have. But as the Spirit of God fills you, then you begin discovering those things. Like I never envisioned when I was a kid, a teenager, that I would be running a comic book media company. It was there, it was dormant in me, and God had to get my life actuated, so to speak, and then these things began happening.
So when you were growing up, were you like one of the kids that draws on everything? Were you pretty artistic growing up?
No, I wasn't. My mother was. My mother had a doctorate in education, and she was a great artist, and she did things. My father was a contractor. My mother was a school teacher. So I could literally get away with nothing. And I was a little bit of a rounder in school. I'd get suspended and do stuff and I was a great student, a little bit bored.
We would have been friends.
I was just telling my staff, they were just shocked. I was telling them about my seventh grade math teacher, Miss Mosley. I sent her to the hospital because I had this snake that looked, because I live like where I live is like a lot of rattlesnakes and moccasins. I've killed a lot of each just where I live on a lake and in the woods and everything here in rural Florida. And I got this plastic snake that it just looked just like a water moccasin. So I went up to this teacher. I said, this wonderful black lady. And I said, hey, Miss Mosley, I said, help me with this. And I threw that water moccasin looking thing on her desk. And that poor lady, she turned ashen white, cleared off her desk, and went running out of the room. And, we laughed a little bit. And then one of my friends, who actually is an investor in Kingstone now, he's a longtime friend. We've been friends. He's one of my main investors. He said, I heard him say, Art, you are in so much trouble. And then the principal came walking in after a little bit. But they had to take her to the hospital, put her on tranquilizers to get her sedated. But the funny thing was, I ended up later in life or after I graduated college, I actually was a teacher for a while, public school teacher here in this county. And her and I were friends. She was a wonderful Christian lady, and she forgave me the whole thing. But yeah, I got in trouble. That wasn't all that I did. But anyway,
That's funny, man. That's there. I love this like sense of community because it's like it would be very easy to like for you to have left and gone to Hollywood or Nashville or Austin, but you stayed in Central Florida.
yeah, actually, I used to I was a children's pastor at a church. We had a huge children's ministry, hundreds and hundreds of kids we bring in. And actually, it was kind of the genesis of the comic books because I was always struggling to have materials that connect with the kids. And so I began creating these stage productions, began creating our own materials, and I prayed. I said, God, I said, I need somebody to help me do this. And this guy joined our church. His name was J.B. Jones. He was a Hollywood special effects guy. He did 2 James Bond movies. He did Cape Fear, Miami Vice. He was just great. And he brought all of this movie equipment up, special effects equipment up to our town, Leesburg, when he moved from Miami. He's a great guy, did his funeral, all these Hollywood people there at his funeral. He's a great guy. And anyway, we began doing these things. And then the Southern Baptists, they flew me up to Nashville. And they said, we want to have you consult with us. And I said, well, first of all, I said, your material's junk. Okay, it's just terrible stuff to connect with. And so before I got on the plane, they said, can you come back over here? We want to talk to you. And anyway, they offered me the national job creating like materials in this. I said, I don't want to move to Nashville. I think God wants me to stay here in this little town. And then, Kingstone ended up coming apart. And so, I believe, I like what you said. Community to me is important, and I feel like it's very important that communities pull together. That's like when I made that movie No Vacancy, is I wanted to show what happens in a community when a community and a church work together. University of Florida Health Center, they work with us on this medical center to help indigent people. We have people in the city work with us, 50 volunteer doctors, 8 volunteer dentists. We work together to try to better our community. And I really feel like the movie No Vacancy. I feel like our church is an example for addressing homelessness and addiction in our nation. I am absolutely convinced of that.
I love that. Yeah, I love many parts of it. You know, especially like so much of its origin, as you've talked about, stems from that moment in the hospital when prisoners came to your aid, and what your mother saying it completely
Yeah.
changed her view of prisoners.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's really cool how God has brought it full circle. Like we partner with the Prison Book Project. We partner with these other ones where people we do big discounts to get these comics into prisons. And we have thousands of here, I'll just show you. I mean, this is pretty typical. Like today, okay, like today, here's two letters from prisoners praying, asking, please send us your comics. That just came
Wow.
in the mail just before I jumped on this call. So we have, a lot of prisoners, basically, they have about a third grade reading level, and they just have not really gotten the education they need. They certainly haven't gotten the spiritual education that they need. And so we're kind of visiting it on the back end. And so we like to partner with prison ministries, and we do that literally every week.
So 19. When did you become? What age did you become the children's or the youth pastor?
It was in my 20s. I became the children's pastor in my 20s. I taught school and I coached football, did that for a few years. And then the church really asked me to come on because I was working with the students, the youth ministry, but I ended up focusing on kids, and which was really it was a good genesis to begin doing comic books. One of the things that I have a real conviction about is it's much improved now, but in the early stages, a lot of the Christian media was not really, it wasn't really great content.
Yeah.
And so when we started the comics, I just said, hey, I'm not competing against Christian publishers. I'm competing against Marvel and DC. DC just had the Joker being pregnant, giving birth to a baby, and all of that whole transgender woke stuff.
Yeah.
And so most of our artists work with Marvel and DC because I want to be able to compete against that. And so, the first thing we did was the Kingstone Bible, which is the most complete graphic adaptation of the Bible that's ever been done. That's it. Yeah. Yeah, we also did it. We also did it like in six soft covers. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, we also did it like in six soft covers. And basically, and we've told people, we started a thing this year called a Bible in a year. And we say, hey, within a year, you can understand the Bible because only 7% of people, Kevin, only 7% of people in America have ever read the entire Bible. And so, it's like if you had anything and only 7% of the people readily read the instruction manual, you're going to have a problem. And so we're trying to really get this to the next generation. And then July 4th last year, of course, we released US Comics, which is, you got it. You got it. Besides that, two of the big things that we do, which actually now are our top two selling things, we released the Constitution as a graphic novel.
Oh, yes.
And we released the special version with,
My man.
yeah, with our
I've been
man, yes.
I've been
Well,
diving I've
it's
been
been like a
diving
dream
through it.
come true the last 2 weeks, hasn't it?
Oh, it's been so I mean, it is like every time I check my phone, something incredible has happened. It's amazing. So it was like really and we'll have to dive into each of these because I've got, so many things to say about each of them.
Sure, sure, sure.
With regard to the Kingstone Bible, and this happens with all your work, you elucidate, you give like flesh to words that I've encountered so many times. And I notice with the Bible, I've read a lot of books, I read a lot of really good books, but the Bible's the only one that like evokes a living spirit. And I noticed that it happens even with the comic, it happens even in a different way.
Yeah, one of the things that's really powerful, I think, about comics and about most visual media, and I tell this to people sometimes, like if I'm speaking somewhere, I said, well, you know what? I said, I could deliver an oratory or a message or a sermon or whatever, and a week later, people could not remember 90% of it. But a movie that I had in theaters in 2022, they can probably remember every single scene from that movie because the visuals stick with us. There's something called the dual code theory of cognition that we process images in one area of our brain, we process text in another area of our brain. But when you measure those together, put those together, and that's exactly what comics does. There's a lot more engagement. There's a lot more reading. Like, for example, you held up the America Part 1. We just get flooded from our customers. And this one teacher, this one teacher wrote us a week or two ago. She said, I ordered your America Part One or whatever it was. So I was going to start using it in my classroom, but she said this kid came up and grabbed it, and he's just been devouring it. Well, kids can really remember and understand and really begin to see. I've had people say, I mean, people that were mature Christians say, now I understand the Bible, or now I understand the book of Revelation. And so it's just that there's that visual thing. And the other thing that a lot of people don't realize, Kevin, is in the history of Christianity, that Christians have been very involved with the arts. I mean, even in the early catacombs where they would tell the gospel story on the walls and different things. And you look at back at all the classical art and stuff. And so, I think with Kingstone, like a lot of people, we're just really, there's a lot of great artisans out there. We're really trying to recapture that same creative spirit, because if there's anything that is creative, it's God. Okay.
Oh
You can
yeah,
look at an emu, you can look at a
he's the big
platypus,
one.
okay, look at us. Okay. God is very creative.
Yeah, I really liked how you guys, because I was wondering how are they going to do the epistles? Like, how are they going to transform Paul's words? And of course, when I started reading it, I was like, yeah, this is how you do it. So you guys did a really good job, even bringing passages to life that maybe seem like they don't have characters, but they did. They do.
They do have characters, and they do, and God does develop our character through it, because that's why the Bible is, again, 7% of people read the entire Bible. They don't know what Philemon is. They don't know what the book of Exodus is. And when you read the whole Bible as a whole, you can see, literally, you can see God's grand story. You can see the story of redemption even in the first chapter. You can see the consummation in the last. And you can see that, God has a plan, and it's interwoven. And the best commentary on the Bible is actually the Bible itself. Okay. The thing is, a lot of people, as you've heard, a context without a a text without a context is a pretext. Okay. And so you need to be able to understand the context of things. That's one thing that really just grated my grits the whole time, that, they, the news, the legacy media, they specialized in taking one little thing out of Trump or Vance or whatever, and then they would just blow it up into this complete lie. That's why, if you're going to be if you're going to be textually accurate, you have to have the text, but you have to have a context for that text. Otherwise, it's just a pretext, and you're spinning some kind of fable, just like the legacy media has done for the last several years.
They know they're doing it. They know how that operation works, and they do it the opposite. I mean, they were doing the opposite with Biden, where they were like adding context, or they were just ignoring everything. So they're capable of doing it. That's why partly why it's so refreshing to see what you guys are doing, because like you said, it's so important that your competitor is like the top of the industry, the Marvel guys and all that, instead of like I've talked to the Chosen guys quite a bit, and
I
that
mean,
was their mindset as well.
well, it's really neat. We've picked up, I mean, we've just picked up some phenomenal artists, and we keep adding more to there. But it's really interesting. I think that God kind of had like a little, had the kind of the last laugh here. But when we started our U.S. Comics line, there was an artist. His name was Joe Bennett. He's actually Brazilian. He has a different name, but he goes by Joe Bennett. And he was like a top horror artist, not a top horror artist, but he was a top artist with Marvel. Amazing Hulk. He did, Captain America. He's a great artist, still is. He creates a lot of stuff for us. And right now we're working. He's doing a comic book for us right now on the first president, on George Washington. He's doing one on the Barbary Pirates. The War of 1812. It's going to be some great comics that are coming out. But anyway, how we got him was of course, he was with Marvel making bank, but he liked a tweet that somebody put out, and then all of the woke crowd, they jumped on Marvel. And so Marvel fired him. We picked him up, and now he did
Because
the
he
cover.
liked the tweet, they fired him.
No, this was 2 or 3 years ago. But
Gotcha.
but we were able to pick him up. Okay, so they fired one of their best artists. We picked him up, and he did that. He did both those covers behind me, the Constitution, America Part One. He did those. I mean, he's just a great artist. And so we've ended up drawing both what we're doing with some animation we've got coming up, and also with the comics. We've been able to draw some great talent to it. And
Oh, you can tell that's and this is a good segue to the Constitution, because again, I've read the Constitution quite a bit. I wrote for Glenn for 6 years, so I
oh wow,
I had to know the Constitution. I had to
Yeah.
know the Bill of Rights. It was something that we discussed in our content meetings. It was something that he expected us all to know about, because he would assign us a story and be like, tell me how the Constitution compares to like the Roman Empire or whatever, the very like Glenn Beck mindset. But this showed me the Constitution in a brand new way, and I found myself just like taking notes and learning things that I didn't know, even though I've spent so much time with it.
We had a guy, Kevin, we had a guy write us a while back. Listen, he says, I'm 72, I'm college educated. He said, now I understand the Constitution, because he said, I mean, we read it, we kind of mentally there again, there's something that happens deeper in our soul, so to speak, that you can really kind of begin to understand and to empathize. And that's why I think that motion pictures are very powerful, because you get the soundtrack, you get things, you really develop that emotive, visceral part of our lives. But yeah, the Constitution, what the Bible is to the Christian faith, the Constitution is to America. And and the left does everything they can to change the Constitution, to back the bench, whatever. But the Constitution, those guys that did that are extremely, extremely wise guys. One thing, a comic we just released, I didn't send it to you, but we just released a comic called The Forging, and it's on the Constitutional Convention. And if you can see all of the things, the underplay, the drama that went into actually making our Constitution, and there was a reason for everything that they did. I recently read a book by Charlie Kirk on the Electoral College, and we'll probably do a comic book on the Electoral College too, that people understand there is a whole reason behind this. But the Constitution's like the Bible, is a very durable document. It's not in the same sense of the Bible being divinely inspired, but I have no question that the biblical worldview of the Bible definitely influenced our Constitution. And there's no other document like it. There's never been a document like it in all of history. And so if they destroy the Constitution, then they would it'd be a big step. Actually, we found out like this. There's some states that are mandating the teaching of the Constitution, and so we're trying to connect with those states and say, hey, if you want your kids to understand the Constitution, you give them all a copy of this. And that's part of our rationale behind U.S. Comics.
That's when my daughters are pretty young, but as I was reading, I decided when they get old enough, this is what they're gonna read this, and we'll sit down and read it together, and just go maybe do the Bill of Rights, or even one at a time, or maybe just like 4 or 5 pages at a time, and just talk about them, because it is like definitely a resource. It's a
Yes.
tool.
Yes. Yeah, we want to connect with educators. We really feel like, and a lot of kids, like, there's a lot of people that are non-faith people that read our comic books in the Christian comic space, because they enjoy the comics, they can read, they can understand. In the same way, I think there's a lot of people that have been brought up in a very leftist educational environment. And I can say that as a former public school teacher. I mean, it was horrendous what I saw in the public school and what I experienced in the public school. Like, I had the school that I went to, the only in the county, was the only 100% union school. And so when I came on staff as a new teacher, boy, the pressure on me to join, so they kept it 100. So I joined for the first year, and I started reading those magazines from the AFT and the NEA stuff. It was like reading the manifesto from the Communist Party. So I immediately left. I didn't care who got upset with me. I just immediately got out of there,
Good for
out of
you.
the union. But the thing is, we have to restore, these people out there that they're looking as heroes, like Colin Kaepernick and other stuff. Those guys are not heroes, okay? These guys that really, really sacrificed and made this country, those guys are heroes. And so we're trying to accurately, I mean, these guys had a lot of pimples and scars and a lot of things that they did wrong, but God used them to establish America. And there is no question that America has been the biggest blessing to this world by far that any country has ever seen.
I agree. And that's what, we hear a lot about the timeline of empires, and people like trying to imply that, oh, the American empire is declining, but you're right that this isn't something that we can compare to previous models on a one-to-one basis.
There is none. There is none.
So another part of and you're great about this with all of them, but with the US comics I love, you give us these stories that I had never heard about, and you really show, cuz we all know about, like you said, we all know about the pimples and the warts and all that. That's something that it gets focused on constantly in the education system. But what I love is that you show the kindness of Christians in a way that I didn't really get that exposure to growing up. And I grew up in Oklahoma. So there's no fear of the Bible here.
Yeah. No, you're 100% right. The left. I'm reading a book right now called Summer of the Gods, and it's about this. It's about the Scopes trial, and it just infuriates you as you see what the ACLU did to try to remove patriotism, try to remove a love of country. They put in all of this they went against everything. They tried to get the evolution, and they started with the colleges, and you got to have freedom of speech, and then they just went down to the high schools and so you have a system that's been literally indoctrinated in one view. And I feel like the Bible is like a lion. I just let it out of its cage. It'll do its work. But the thing is, as we've seen, whether it's COVID you've just seen a suppression of truth for years, decades here in our country. And all that I'm saying is, let's step in. Let's both put on the gloves. Let's get in the ring. Okay, let's see. Let's see what let's get the philosophy. Let's get it out here in the open for people to have conversations. But it's been so proven, that they've modulated the conversation. They've tried to just keep it one way, not get out all of the truth. And I think Trump getting in was a great mercy of God to our country. I mean, you look at, he has done more. He did more in 4 days than
Yes.
Joe Biden did
In
in
one
4
day,
years.
in 12 hours he did more. Just that interview, that just talking to reporters. I was watching Fox and they were like, I'm pretty sure that he has answered more questions than Biden did, and at least the first year.
Yes. Well, the bed last when I was talking yesterday to a friend of mine who's a retired colonel. He's just a great guy. Rubio and Trump had automatically put all these sanctions against Colombia. So, okay, you don't play like that. Well, Kelly told me this morning, she goes, oh, Colombia, the president is sending a plane up here to get the people.
The presidential plane. It's amazing. Oh,
Yeah.
it's incredible. Yeah, I just had an article about steel come out, and just like this, and again, like you're saying with like the media, they focus on the wrong things. It's like the whole power of his tariff is like the threat of the tariff. It's like that's the power of Trump. It's like everybody knows that he will do it. He will do it if he has to, but he rarely has to.
Yeah, of course, he has a place here in Florida and everything, and our state is very pro DeSantis, pro Trump, and yeah, I'm hoping at some point, I really would like to, I'd love to connect with him. I want to connect with DeSantis, but we feel like the U.S. comics, what we're doing, we're also beginning to create AI animation too. I can't talk too
Cool.
much about that, but we're
Gotcha.
working on some things. But we have signed an agreement with NBC Universal for a licensing deal on some animation that they have. And actually, NBC Universal is going to be here in about 2 weeks, and we're going to talk about, some potential business dealings. But the thing is that we are trying to do right now is 2026 is the 250th anniversary of our country. Trump has already said our semi-quincentennial, I'm going to blow it up. We're going to blow it out of the water. So we are going to celebrate America. And so what we're doing with Kingstone between 25 and 2026, we are trying to create as much of our U.S. comics content, as much of our animation content, to be able to present it, in 2026 and really celebrate America. I'll tell you one thing that Obama and Biden just made me want to just puke my guts out. All these people going around apologizing for America.
Yeah.
Apologizing for America. I'm done with that. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm proud of where our country is. Yeah. We're all sinners. We've all made horrible mistakes, but you cannot point to a single model better than America in time past or even time current. And so with U.S. Comics, we're trying to come out with it.
Oh, I love it. It's fantastic. I mean, because like other nations took advantage of that, like like that over apologizing, and it also like it didn't make the rest of the world feel good either.
Whenever you enable people, people have, you take away their self-respect. People need to work and to be able to do, I mean, they can't, there's exceptions, obviously, but what the left is really good about making the exception the rule. And
Yeah.
you always make compassionate exceptions for different things. But the deal is what Rubio did in stopping all foreign aid until we can evaluate it, whatever, I think was one of the most brilliant decisions ever. And I've been an advocate, obviously, for that for a long time. But yeah, we have a new day in America, and we want to be that. We want to be that new comics company for this new day in America.
It's perfect timing. I mean, there is a change, and it goes. I think it really goes back to that moment, that intersection, that like millisecond where the bullet went this way, when the bullet went that way, and Trump's head went that way. I think that was if things that was the moment that would decide the future of America, and I think that's the moment when everybody who has any sort of logical basis said, "Yeah, there were angels on stage. Yeah, there was God's hand tilted Trump's head, it's and that was such an affirmation of what's so special about America.
Yeah, I agree. I think that was a defining point in America. I think people saw, okay, there's a divine factor in this election. This is just not business as usual. And frankly, we could not really, the moral rot and the families and what they're doing, the boys and girls and gender and all that kind of stuff, we would not have been able to keep going much longer. We're living on the afterglow of the Christian experience from 200 years ago and at different times that people have. I can tell you, man, I'm a big Trump guy. I mean, I put the Trump sign, I put the Webster sign out here. I've been
Well,
talking,
man,
been talking about Trump. I think sometimes people get a little bit, because I'm a pastor, I think people get a little bit frustrated with me sometimes
that's
because
all
I'm
right.
so political. If you look back in history, other people, business people, pastors, they were very involved. They fought in the Revolutionary War. And if you really believe in what you and I believe, Kevin, you're really willing to sacrifice. I had some people send me some nasty emails about the Trump comic we created, whatever. I'm like, I'm sorry, but
Yeah.
this man's an incredible man. And I think that because we published this comic before the election, I took a huge risk. I mean, I printed a bunch of these comics. We made an investment in it. We didn't know if he's going to win or not. But
Yeah.
I said, this is going to be our little effort to help get the word out about President Trump. And man, the comic book sells like crazy. Like last week Amazon ordered like 800 copies of it. I mean, we sold very short period of time, thousands of copies. And so we're going to keep selling it and keep, promoting it. And it's our collector's edition. Like what they do in the comics industry, Kevin, they'll do like special covers. They'll have a comic, but then they'll do like a special cover for it. And so we felt like, who else to do for our special cover?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because this is the actual comic is called The Stars and Stripes. It's a very patriotic comic, but we did a Trump edition of that comic where we put his cover on there, and it's called Restoring the Glory to Old Glory because we felt that that's what he would do, and that's what he is doing right now.
So I love this gets to another part of what you guys do very well, storytelling. This is just a great example of and I grew up, I was a flag kid growing up. I used to collect flags, collect maps, like just love them. So this is the story of our flag. And it's just so creative how you guys do this from a storytelling perspective.
Well, I appreciate you. My investors are very patriotic. I'm very patriotic. My father was a veteran. I lost my favorite uncle in Vietnam. He was a helicopter pilot, multiple family members in World War II, and I signed to go into the military, but my parents at the last minute said, we really would like for you to go to college. So I went to college instead of going into the military. But yeah, if somebody starts spitting on the flag or trying to burn it in my presence, okay, there's gonna be a hoedown. I don't care who it is. I don't care how many there are. I'm jumping in that fray. I'm not gonna put up with it because that flag, so many people have sacrificed for that flag, and it's a symbol, is an enduring symbol of freedom. That's why we did a comic book about it. And people it's just a flag like Michelle Obama, a stupid flag. Okay, well, they don't have an appreciation and understanding of what that flag represents. So we said, hey, we're just going to do a flag just on the comic book, we're going to do a comic book just on the American flag so people can understand. There's some very interesting stories in the development of the American flag.
fascinating stories, and you know, you capture, and the stories that we all think we know, like the raising of the flag at Iwo Jima. I didn't realize the photographer, what, he fell into the ocean the first time they rose the flag. I mean, that's such a cool detail I had no idea about.
It's a beautiful thing, and we just want to be able to celebrate America, and and we want to be a part. I really resonate with this slogan: "Make America Great Again, make America Healthy Again, make America Strong Again." And if we work together and drop these, I felt like Obama was the biggest. They should have called him the divider in chief, not the commander
Yeah.
in chief, because he just divided people by race and by it's just like people come here to Leesburg, and we have such a great unity, racial unity, church unity. People, and of course with the political thing, it's been a little bit different. People, been very strong about this, the last couple of elections. But like the movie No Vacancy, that had its genesis. When we bought this motel and we changed it to the name of the Samaritan, and we did it just to take care of homeless families because we were in a major recession. Our state had the highest unemployment rate in the nation. Our county and the state had the highest unemployment rate. And so when we purchased, and actually CBS 60 Minutes actually did a story about the homeless problem in Central Florida. And when we purchased this motel, the Orlando Sentinel on the Lake Sentinel did a front page article about this church buying this motel. And anyway, I talked this black guy was a friend of mine. I got his story, and it just synced together to become this really powerful movie. And actually, there's some other cool stuff happening with the movie right now. But basically, we're trying to get people to unify instead of being divided. And I think the end result, I think we saw it in the election. You saw a great unity of people coming together, people of race, people of gender, people of different minority groups. They're saying, and you see, there is more unity right now that I've seen in the last 2 weeks. It's unbelievable because I was listening to Jesse Waters the other night. He goes, these people all complaining about Trump. He goes, they don't want to prosper. I mean, they're complaining about
Right?
prospering.
Waters is so funny, man.
He's hilarious.
Yeah, so this is also reminding me of something that you said earlier about your role as a pastor and your political views. And what I love in the Constitution comic, you dive into the First Amendment, and when you focus on the freedom of religion, you look at this idea that it's been misconstrued as like a separation of church and state, and that's what it says. So
Yeah.
where did this idea go sour, and what does it really signify?
Well, as you well know, the whole separation of church and state came from the thing with Thomas Jefferson, writing to the Danbury Baptist. And basically he was saying that we're not going to have one denomination that's going to do that. But if you read again, that goes back to a text without a context as a pretext, okay? And they
Yeah,
take this one little text and try to blow it up to this whole thing.
a
You
letter.
a
It
letter.
wasn't even. It wasn't even. It's not in the Constitution that says that at all.
Not in the Constitution. I mean, you can see all the founding documents. You can read the letters from the people. If you're going to take letters, then take all of these letters that George Washington wrote and everybody else. I mean, you're going to take one letter and try to blow up for this text case, which is a false thing. And so basically, the big thing that, like you said, you mentioned the Bill of Rights. People, I want them to read this to understand we are free people. We have liberty, and we are able to speak. And this whole thing about these people, they're offended, and they have to go to these little safe corners and stuff. Somebody close to me graduated, got their doctorate at Vanderbilt, and I went up there to go do a 5 mile, go up to do a 5K run with him, and we were talking, and I went into I learned about Vanderbilt there. I went up there to do this run, and he said that the day after Trump was elected, he said that it was like a nuclear bomb had gone off. All of these people, they were so shattered, and they were just gathering in groups, and they needed these comfort dogs and support dogs. Honestly, most Americans from 1770 to
Oh
1950
yeah.
would just laugh at just the weakness and everything. And I told my wife, when Biden was in there, and I said, if I was China or Russia, I said, this is the time to make a move. You got this incredibly weak country. But now I believe we're seeing a new fortification of America, and we want to be a part of that.
I love that. Yeah, I was finishing my master's in journalism at in Texas in 2016. So and into 17. So I was there when Trump won, and it was like you said, it was just like unhinged. There were so many people unhinged, and I always remember they had all these like pocket constitutions, and they'd written racist on the constitution that they were handing out. And then I looked over and there was like a young black kid with a MAGA hat on, and they were screaming at him. And it was just this like disharmony in their minds was mind blowing to me. Like, that's a little bit racist what you guys are doing.
Listen, there are so many African Americans, blacks that are pro Trump. I mean, a lot of people don't realize how the Democratic Party is it's very sad. But in the 90s, some of the strongest communities were the black main streets. Yeah, segregation was wrong. We needed to work together. But they had a very strong economy and everything. And so a book that we're about to release that you've got to at some point talk about is we're releasing a graphic novel called Booker, on the story of Booker T. Washington. And I'm going to tell you, that man was an amazing American. He was an amazing Christian. And what he suffered for his Christian faith, what he suffered for to elevate blacks, and then for the left to castigate him it's ridiculous. So anyway, we're releasing a story on Booker T. Washington. We also had a great story, The Forging, about the Constitutional Convention, but we have it narrated by Richard Allen, who was the first black pastor in Philadelphia, had established the first black church. And so he narrates the story about the Constitutional Convention. And so, we want to work alongside other Americans that want to make America great again. And we also want to be united by race. We want to be united as Americans. But if you don't understand the story, you'll buy into the lie that has been promulgated for decades in America.
Yeah, but you guys don't shy away from the truth. Like I love in the Constitution your choice of not only a narrator, and he's more of like a tour guide. He's giving you like a tour of the Constitution as a living institution. And sorry, go ahead. It's so great how you did that, and you chose him as a black man, but it wasn't this like preachy. He dives into some really kind of unpleasant truths, but he says it in a way that has hope, and he explains the story. And there's not this like I'm covering my eyes aspect that you see on the left.
Well, we've actually had some people. We have a lot of success on social media, and that's where most of our advertising is through social media.
That's where I found you.
Oh, really?
Yeah, on Instagram.
I needed to know that. Thank you for telling me that.
Yeah.
But one of the most important graphic novels we release is one called The Book of God. And it's a graphic novel that tells us how we got the Bible. And so this gentleman is our narrator. He's kind of a Rastafarian looking guy, but he's our narrator that takes us through about how we know how the Bible is put together, how we know that the Bible is really a divine book, that is the book of God. So we did the same thing with the Constitution. We had a narrator to walk it through. But I've had some nasty grams from MAGA people. Oh, you're woke, you're DEI. I said, I'm not DEI. I said, just because I'm having somebody of color tell our story. So anyway, hopefully they'll get their lives right and understand who we are. But it just said, that we're very sensitive times, and people, think, and of course I'm against DEI, I'm against all that stuff, but we feel like we still have to, we need unity. And racism is an ugly sin that no Christian should have a part of at all.
No, I agree. And I love in your mission, I see a lot there. You're also breaking stereotypes about what a conservative should be, what a Christian should be. Like, it's important that we have compassion for prisoners. It's important that we should look at their humanitarian needs. We need to take care of the homeless. We need to look at health. All these things that, like, stereotypically conservatives are just kind of portrayed as, well, fry them, like keep the homeless in the cold, all these things. But that's not a Christian perspective.
It's not. I went over in our county. We have something called the Northwest Lake Hospital Tax District, and one of the ministries we have at our church, we have a medical center that we partner with the University of Florida, and we give medical care to indigent people. We have like 50 volunteer doctors, 8 volunteer dentists, numerous nurses, and other people, and we offer this service for free. It's just there's non-hospital and other people underwrite it, and these conservatives in our county said, well, hey, we just need to do away with this hospital tax district. And literally it's like 60 or $75 on our tax bill that goes to help indigent care. And I went over and spoke at that county meeting, and I lit them up. I
There we
said,
go.
and I was planning on going over speaking again, but I didn't need to go this time again. Basically, that's what makes conservatives look like stupid people. Like the left tries to say, "Oh, we're the compassionate ones." Okay, well, giving needles and drugs to people to live on the street like an animal in San Francisco, that's compassion. It's horrible. It's torture. Whereas when we want to help people get free from drugs, we want to help people get free. And one thing I was going to say, if I end up speaking again, I'm going to say, guys, my conservative bona fides are there. You just have to look me up on the internet and you can see I'm conservative with a capital C. But when you do that type of thing, well, we don't want to give money to help the indigent, medically indigent. That's what makes conservatives look stupid and
Yeah.
uncaring. And that's one reason we made the movie No Vacancy, because we really want to say this is a pattern for addressing addiction and homelessness in our nation.
Yeah, I love that. Because our Christianity should come first.
Yes.
And it's like I always think of the early Christians who like were they kind of scared everybody because they were like taking in all these people who were just sort of castaways or who were left to die, or babies who were just thrown out in the street because that was the normal view in Rome or in the Roman Empire and all that. So and progressively that branched out to healthcare, to
That's right.
to
That's
a
right.
totally different world. It was a revolution in humanity.
Yeah, and so if you were to take away all of the Christian healthcare, all of the Christian that they're adopting at-risk kids, that are doing things, that are running shelters, that are foster parents, and like one thing that I do every year, we have something called Life Chain that our church and the Catholic Church, we all get out there on US 27 here in Central Florida. We're holding the Choose Life, Choose Life, Choose Life, and we actually have a pregnancy care center at our church. If you were to subtract all of and everybody wants to criticize Christianity and try to minimalize it, don't want to have it in the public square. You can't talk about Jesus. You can't do it. Okay, can't talk about the Bible. By the way, I'm excited about Oklahoma, the Bible thing. I'm really excited.
It's
Yeah,
great.
I want to get our comic Bible out there to them. Say, hey guys, look at this.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Let's work on that. Let's
Let's
do
do
that.
it. Let's do it. Let's get that comic Bible out there in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if you were to subtract all of that benevolent capital and that Christians do, it'd be hell on earth, man. It would be horrible. That's why we have people all the time that come here. They come here all the time to do tours of our ministry center, because we have a benevolent center that gives away like 15, 20 tons of food a week. We have a pregnancy care center. Multiple babies are saved. We have a men's center to help men get off alcohol and drugs. We have a women's shelter, the same thing. We have this medical center. And so we have a fresh start job training program. Well, they really need to see how much you care. And I think that this is one reason that our church is such a successful church. I think it's one reason Kingstone has been successful, is that, we have to really not talk it, but we also have to walk it out. I'll give you a quick example about the comics. We have numerous artists that work for Marvel in DC. All those guys, when they get done, I pay them right away. I talk to them. We try to encourage them. Some of them are not believers. But we've had 2 artists that have said, I have never been treated so well in the comics industry as I've been treated with Kingstone Comics. And so, I feel like the way that you do business is also
Oh yeah.
a witness for Christ. Yeah, we're trying to make the light shine. But listen, if you or anybody, your listeners, if you're ever in Central Florida seeing Disney or whatever, you need to make a side tour to come tour Kingstone Studios, and also we'll give you a no vacancy tour that you can see, where the movie was shot.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, that's I'll definitely be down there. I'll include that in the article too as well
Sweet.
to let people know. Yeah, and have you been to the studios in Dallas? Have we talked about this?
I know I have.
Okay, so if you're ever in Dallas, I'll give you the tour. It's such a cool. You would absolutely love it. That's like your spot because it's like a mixture of history, pop culture. I
Sweet.
mean everything. Like a lot of original documents. And well, that's cool. I'll make it down there at some point and check it out.
Well, I'd love to have you. And seriously, if you have any connections with the state of Oklahoma, we would love to send them our comic Bible to say, because they're giving out Bibles, which I think is great, but the kids need to understand it. And I think that what we've created helps kids understand it.
Well, and that was your original. I mean, that's where your comics came from, right? Your this realization that I need to give give people the Bible in a way that they want it, and it's not currently available. Man, is there anything I didn't ask that you wanted to talk about?
And this interview went like twice as long as I thought, and we went a lot of great places, man. I appreciate you. You're a good interviewer.
Man, well, thank you for being here.